I think it looks like everyone is back now. It's nice to see all your faces. I was having a good time looking at all the stuff on Padlet, so I'm just going to go through some of the key points that seem to come out. It seemed as though clear guidance and having tutorials or sort of seminars with worked examples seemed to be something that a lot of people found really useful. And I really love the idea of the kind of new approaches, the idea of a roadshow, which I think came up a couple of times. I think that sounds really fun. And I think also would be a way to kind of get people more engaged, especially if it was framed like that. I don't know, does anyone have anything else they'd like to add to the discussion? Nobody put their name, so I'm sort of putting you all on the spot now.
Certainly lots of input, so that's
very
valuable.
I think it's really great for us to know what people in the community find useful and what kind of ways you're going about finding things. I think there was a question in the chat actually about what we meant by end users as well, which I think is something worth picking up on, because it does depend a bit on your particular project. I mean, obviously there is the applied researcher aspect, but there is equally the kind of policy makers, regulators, public aspect. So I think also considering them in your dissemination plans is important. It's still coming in, which is really great. There were a lot of other questions as well, so I think I'm going to go back to those. So I think I talked about the one about end users already. There was a question about understanding causes of poor uptake, and I think that's also a really important point. Thinking about, you know, whether you can embed evaluation of the methodology and its uptake within what you're proposing. But equally, we have received applications that are about understanding uptake of methodology and guidelines. So I think that's something that would be within our remit. Dawn, did you, were there other questions that you thought I should address?
There was one specific question about if you apply for the MBR, you know, are you then not able to apply for an NIHR or Wellcome Fellowship? I've noticed that was it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, so there's the MRC policy is, I believe, if you have an application in for a research grant, then you're not able to apply for a fellowship at the same time. I think there are situations where you might be able to apply to another organization for a fellowship, but it would need to be for a different project. And you would need to really clearly show and explain in the application how it's different. I think this is something that there is particular guidance on. So I can properly look into that if that's needed. But yeah, I think that is correct, that you can't apply for both at the same time.
Okay, and then I think there was a question earlier from Katrina about rejected proposals. Can they be resubmitted based on feedback?
Yeah, so there's a 12-month moratorium, so you would need to wait 1 year from your initial submission to resubmit. And definitely, I think it's worth getting in touch with me in the meantime to discuss how you might reframe your application. But when you do resubmit, you need to outline in your cover letter what you've changed from the original submission. And I think it's just good to demonstrate to the panel that you've taken on board the feedback.
Great. There is, Jeremy has asked, why can't we have prioritization for methodological issues in the same way that there is prioritization for clinical? Has that come up?
I don't think so, but I'm not sure. Can you expand, Jeremy? I'm not familiar with what you mean by prioritization for clinical problems.
Yes, certainly. So, well, in clinical areas, so obviously now COVID is a priority area, and they do prioritization exercises. I've never done.
Yeah.
And that makes it easier to know what people should apply for. It might even be, themed, or do have themed calls, but for methodological things. So I guess in parallel, I don't know what it would look like exactly, but something parallel to what used to be called the James Lind Alliance method for prioritizing clinical areas, but we could apply that to methodology.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I think something that we could look into. I mean, presumably that's something that would need a lot of time and input from the community, but I think if there's appetite for that within the community, then that would be something really good to do.
It doesn't need that much. As far as I understand, Sean or someone else who's on the call could probably know more about it than I do, but they're not the prioritization exercises are not that complicated to arrange and do for clinical things, at least.
Okay.
And Paula has added a comment into the chat about there has been priority setting exercises published for trials methodology. So that has been, Sean has actually got his hand up. Would you like to contribute at this point, Sean?
Yeah, so Paula has said exactly what I was going to say, and to agree with Jeremy, there's a well-worn method for how to do it, and there are at least three, well, certainly two methodology ones, one for recruitment, one for retention, unanswered research questions that have been done in the formal James Lind Alliance priority setting partnership that Jeremy mentioned. And it isn't, I mean, it's certainly work. It's not trivial, but it's not £500,000 worth of work. So it's entirely feasible. And what would be great would be if the Better Methods, Better Research panel looked to these existing prioritization processes when making decisions about funding, because these will produce the community view on research that is needed. These are important questions that the community wants answered. And if funding decisions could take account of that, so much the better.
Yeah.
Thank you. Those are excellent suggestions. We have got a bit of a theme coming through about what methodology is is being supported, I guess, about the and who supports the application and the translation of methodology. I think that might be quite a big issue that would be worth exploring. Maybe not in this few minutes, but I think it's good to focus on it, because it is sort of it's very helpful that it is about best methods, better research, getting methods into practice and implemented. And the final question, I guess, so something else that's come through that Sam has mentioned here is that methodology isn't only funded through the MBR. And I think an earlier comment Sam made about that the MRC is thinking about, funding consortia or communities. I think, I can't find the comment now, it says something like growing the capacity to do that. So it sounds like maybe there is potentially more budget more of the MRC budget might be able to be spent in that area. I don't know if you or Sam could comment a little bit about.
Yeah, well, I think what Sam was talking about in terms of that methodology can be embedded in a wider program of applied research. So our boards and other panels will accept, a stream of methodology research within a wider program of applied research. So just the point there was that although we're the only panel that has a focus on methodology, don't restrict yourself to just looking at us. If you do want to put a piece of methodological work into a bigger, well, not necessarily a bigger, but a more applied focusing grant. I think that was the point there.
Okay, Paula has just posted some examples of priority setting exercises. So those are really valuable links. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Paula. I think there was something else that I'd noted. Oh yeah, there was a question about the strategic priority and whether you can come in with an application related to that after that opportunity is passed. So we, for example, the qualitative research one, we just had it open for one round. And I mean, the idea of having that focus was to stimulate applications. And I think that, I mean, obviously we can't predict what the funding is going to look like in terms of the applications we received and what gets funded and how that might fit with what your application might be looking at. But I think definitely applications on that theme or a similar theme, or even just more general qualitative methodology applications would definitely be welcomed from here on in,
Thanks, Ros. I think there's one further comment from Sean about the dissemination. So the dissemination part is not research, it's work. So he's made the point, recognition of the work is important, but not easily slotted into a box.
Yeah, and that's, and I think the point about it being ongoing too is a really good point, and I think it's something that we struggle a bit with as a funder, because you know, we want to set up those long-term things, but equally we're giving someone money for a set amount of time, and what happens once that money runs out. So I think, yeah, we is something that is being discussed a lot, both in terms of this sort of methodology uptake and dissemination, but also in terms of data and, you know, all kinds of different things. So there are a lot of conversations ongoing about how we can manage that.
Thanks very much, Ross. I think that takes us up to the 11:15 point where we're scheduled to take a break. Thank you all very much indeed for your contributions in this first half. It's been really great. We've got lots and lots of really excellent stuff being collected in the chat here. We're definitely going to be keeping that along with the recording. We've got a 15-minute break scheduled for us to have a little bit of comfort, move around, stop staring at the screen for a little bit, and then we'll reconvene again in 15 minutes. So it's probably the easiest is just to switch your microphone and camera off and then come back promptly at 11:30 for us to hear about the case, the 3 cases of the successful awards. Thanks.
Thanks a lot.